Hello, my name is Rhonda Riarchi. My research with professional carers has given me an insight into how to help a person living with dementia to be calm and to stay calm, and how to avoid accidentally upsetting the person or provoking a negative response when you're just trying to do your job. This podcast is designed to offer support to EOC call handlers and clinicians to help you get the information you need when taking a call from somebody living with dementia. Firstly, I'd like to dispel some common myths about dementia. Secondly, I'd like to share with you some tips for communicating with people living with dementia. At the end of this podcast, you can see some references and other useful sources of information. Let's begin by considering some common myths about dementia. Myth number 1. Dementia is a form of madness. Actually, people living with dementia are not going out of their minds. Dementia is more about losing the ability to remember information and gradually losing the ability to communicate with others. People living with dementia may get confused and they may have hallucinations, but they're still able to reason and to think. What looks like strange behaviour to us may have a completely logical cause for the person with dementia who is just struggling to communicate something that is wrong with them. Myth number 2. Dementia causes rapid decline and death. With the right care, people live well with dementia for many years, sometimes even decades. Research has shown that dementia does not progress in a straight line because well-being can improve dramatically with the right care. Myth number 3. Dementia takes away your personality and your identity. A person living with dementia is still a person with needs, wants, feelings and thoughts, regardless of what role they play in society now. It is usually the actions of other people that can compromise a person's identity. Myth number 4. Dementia means you have no capacity. Dementia will affect capacity in different ways at different times, so it is important not to assume that the person lacks all capacity. Any person under stress may show signs of confusion or be unable to remember things, but that does not mean they lack mental capacity. A person living with dementia may have periods of lucidity between periods of confusion, and the condition may improve or regress at different times. Now we've separated some myths from the facts, here are some general tips for getting the information you need when taking a call from someone living with dementia. Tip number 1. Slow down and be calm. People with dementia need more time to process what you're saying to them. If you take the time needed for them to answer each question, it will save time with the whole triage. Tip number 2. Listen carefully. Listen carefully to both what the person is saying and how they are saying it. A person with dementia is likely to be very anxious when they call you, so allow them plenty of time to say what they need to tell you and don't interrupt them. It may help them if you repeat back what they have said to you. Tip number 3. Don't judge the integrity of the caller. Communication is much harder for people living with dementia, so it is important that you don't sound judgmental of them. Don't directly contradict anything they say to you, even if you know it to be wrong. If the call is not the patient, explore the patient's capacity to speak with you directly. Don't assume that a caller living with dementia cannot complete a triage. Tip number 4. Avoid interrogating the person. When asking questions, you may find that a person with dementia becomes anxious because they cannot remember the answer. Try to soften your questioning style by paraphrasing your questions or putting them as a statement, such as, "I'd like to find out if you have any pain," instead of, Do you have any pain? This will help to remove any feeling that you are interrogating them. Remember that you can bypass the questions in the Pathways program and refer a caller straight to a clinician if they appear to be very confused. When you feel that the caller is having difficulty answering any questions, refer to a clinician. Tip number 5, reassure the caller. Whatever the course of action that follows, reassure the caller that help is coming. Say things like, "We are going to work through this together," and "We are going to help you with this." This will help the caller to feel less anxious and have trust in you, and it will help you to relate better with them. Your tone of voice can help to keep the caller calm. If you smile when you speak, the caller will hear this, as it will be reflected in the tone of your voice. Tip number 6, keep information simple. Try to break down your questions and keep your statements short, as a person living with dementia will find it difficult to respond to complex information. Choices are difficult for people with dementia, so minimize the options. If the answer is obvious, don't ask the question, particularly if they have already told you the information. Tip number 7, hand over with care. When handing the caller over to a clinician, make sure the clinician is properly introduced to the caller and explain the process to them. Reassure the caller again with statements like, "We are going to help you with this," or "We will take care of that." So that brings us to the end of tips for communicating over the telephone. Here's a quick reminder. Tip number 1, slow down and be calm. Tip number 2, listen carefully. Tip number 3, don't judge the integrity of the caller. Tip number 4, avoid interrogating the person. Tip number 5, reassure the caller. Tip number 6, keep information simple. And tip number 7, hand over with care. Finally, you have the ability to make a real difference to people when they most need your help. Sensitive communication can save time and save lives. Explore these techniques with your colleagues and see the references at the end for more information about dementia and how to help people living with dementia.